We will now, of course, move to our next session, which is the panel, and Azfar will come in. Azfar will come in and introduce the moderator as well as the panel. This is going to be another exciting session. Azfar, thank you for joining us.
Assalamualaikum, Azfar. How are you? Two Azfars are here now.
Two Azfars on the screen. Yes, pleasure to be sharing the screen with you, and good to see you again. And thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this for TRG. And
thank you for hosting.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm really looking forward and excited to learning from you and your panel. So over to you.
Thank you, Azfar, and thanks to TRG for providing us an opportunity to host the program. I congratulate TRG for hosting this digital LearnFest, and we were part since the beginning of this LearnFest when we hosted few years back the physical LearnFest at Movenpick Hotel, Karachi. And in every LearnFest, Nutshell Forum participated and hosted one session. And this time I'm grateful to Umar Jaliyawala for his brilliant initiative, Sara Mashood, and all the other team members, all the seniors of TRG who are our mentors actually. So Nutshell Dialogue is all about elevating society with business. And we engage our three very dear friends. They are actually the rock stars of Pakistan. Two panelists, two women leaders, outstanding women leaders, and my forecast is that both of them will lead this country in the near future. Our first panelist is Dr. Ayesha Khan. She is our Corporate Pakistan Group member. She is the country head Pakistan for Acumen, and she is also the board member of Bank Alfalah Limited. Our second panelist is my very dear friend and another Corporate Pakistan Group very active member and part of our managing committee. She's chartered accountant Ayla Majid. She is the managing director of Khalid Majid Hussain Chartered Accountants. She is the global council member and the board member of ACCA. And she is also the young global leader of World Economic Forum. And she is the member of the Global Agenda Council of Energy of World Economic Forum. An outstanding profile of Ayla, an outstanding profile of Ayesha. And with these two brilliant women leaders, our moderator is my very dear friend and my brother, British Pakistani, one of our assets for Pakistan, Faraz Khan. He's also the member of Corporate Pakistan Group, and he's part of our think tank since the beginning of Corporate Pakistan Group. He's the CEO of Seed Ventures, and he's also the visiting professor of St. Mary School, London, an outstanding person. So these three rock stars will conduct this show. Topic is very important, elevating society with business. And without any further delay, I want to hand over the further proceedings to my friend Faraz Khan for the introduction and interaction with Ayesha and Ayla. Over to you, Faraz.
Thank you so much. As per Nutshell Conferences and TRG LearnFest for actually curating this conversation, much needed one, especially the times that we're in, economically and the whole COVID environment. Like Azfar has introduced our wonderful panels, they're dear friends and absolute inspirational ladies who are leading their own verticals, and I'm sure they will become extremely more impactful with times to come. Now, let me start with a googly, as they say. We grew up with the fact that our business is supposed to make profit, and that is the purpose of the business. And government, the development sector, and the good people are supposed to do the good stuff for society. And that was the concept primarily that the education, the times that we're living in, gave us, at least to in our generation. What has changed? Why business should elevate society? Business is supposed to be profit making. So it's a reverse question, and I would ask Ayesha and Ayla. I think Ayesha, you being with Acumen, can actually take the brunt of this question for the first time, and then Ayla can actually join in.
Okay, sure. Thank you, everyone. Azfar, thank you for the wonderful introduction, and thanks to the Nutshell Forum for organizing this and TRG for hosting it. The program just looks so interesting. I wish I could have listened in on more of it than I did already. So, Faraz, you're absolutely right. You know, all of us, and we're certainly at the age group in which all of us grew up with this whole idea of, as Sanderson put it, the only business of business is actually doing business. And the idea was you focus entirely on making profit. You may have a CSR wing on the side that does stuff, but primarily that's so that you don't really suffer on your sales side by something terrible happening and then being implicated. Like if you go back to Nike sweatshops, happened way back in the 90s. And so the idea was, well, avoid the negative publication, just so you can actually make more money. And I grew up with it. I'm an economist. Whenever we did our, functional optimization, we're constantly optimizing for profit. Saying, okay, how do you actually optimize? And back then, all of you remember Jack as the idol of what it manager, what company success really meant, and this gentleman raised profitability by tens of percent, hundreds of percentage points there. What happened for us is that we found out it didn't work. So decades later, you look at the fact that inequality increased, the environment was decimated, the gains from capital being accrued to a certain percentage of society, to business, didn't necessarily spill out to the rest of society. And in fact, what you found that capital kept accumulating to the investor side and workers kept getting poorer and poorer. And while some people, the past few decades have been great for poverty being lifted out, inequality has increased over time. The environment has been decimated. And when we look at our political processes, when you see the types of leaders who have been elected, it is quite obvious that money has played a role in also hijacking the political process. So what really happened was that we started looking at the results of this whole idea of the only business of business is making money. And that's all you need to focus on. In fact, business, since it's the engine of society, has such a strong and critical role to play. It has so many knock-on effects everywhere that at this point, it's almost a sort of code word, stakeholder management. You have, the CEO of BlackRock writing letters saying, at the end of the day, we are not all about profit. We're all about our stakeholder management. And from a personal note, I think as we've all been living through the past few months and looking at how COVID has struck and how our societies have been decimated in so many varied ways and how the impact of that, frankly, has fallen disproportionately on the poor, it's really obvious that we need to figure out how capital moves to its most efficient allocation. And by efficient, I don't mean the most profitable. I mean, how do you take money and get it to entities that in turn will unleash human potential and productivity across the board? So how do you, instead of, as a society, valuing what money, power, fame, which is what my generation grew up with, and I think it also spills over to the next generation, how do we start valuing something different? How do we value human dignity? How do we value human productivity? And in that, business not only has a critical role to play as an enabler, it is actually one of the prime movers. So the whole conversation has shifted. We have seen the impact of this, and I'm so happy to see that discourse also moving. Ayla.
Thank you. Ayla, same question to you. Post your premise, if you can actually focus on the supply and distribution communities, how we need to rethink of the stakeholders in this new world as well. That would be great as well. Please.
Yeah. Thank you, Faraz, and thank you, TRG. Thank you, Azfar Nutshell, for allowing me to share my thoughts. It is a topic that is very close to my heart, and I think even on a Saturday morning, we are quite excited to talk about this. And lovely to be joined by friends Faraz and Ayesha and Azfar. So when I look at what's the role of business, so I think the role of business over time has really changed. And it has changed also for the reason because when we analyze, and now I'll slightly talk from the perspective of the business owners or the shareholders, or sort of when shareholders are looking at making strategies. I think the lens of making decisions has really evolved, and there is greater awareness that it is not only about making money, but even if we want to make money and we want to be sustainable, the older ways are not going to be, they're not going to generate profits, or they're not going to be sustainable. So I'll touch upon how businesses are looking at their stakeholders. So stakeholders earlier used to be probably just the shareholders, the investors, the financial institutions, maybe the suppliers, and then obviously greater sort of awareness came about people, and then employees, and all the others sort of got involved, and obviously the customer as well. But I think it is so important to look at every node and looking at how the planet really functions. I like to sort of visualize things from one end to the other, that what is the complete life cycle of a product, of a service, of a resource, and then one can sort of picture that planet is very much part of that. Any decision that we take now, which is sending out carbon emissions, maybe it's not immediately impacting us in the next few minutes, maybe in the next few months, or maybe not in the next few years. Eventually it will. And I'll sort of link here another sort of this discussion about climate change and about saving the planet, because if we don't have it, we will not have the planet. We have looked at it, COVID has really exposed the fragilities of the world, and that has actually sort of made us rethink at every level, whether it's at the management, whether it's at the governance level. Companies have sort of completely not evaluated this risk. And we understand that if we don't work together, if we don't collaborate with each other, what's happening? The glaciers are melting in Antarctica, but all the shorelines in the world, they are changing. They're going to have an impact on the communities there. Those communities will then have an impact on maybe the supply chains, as far as you talked about the supply side, the distribution side, etc., etc. And when we look at the growth of organizations, whether within a country or whether at a transnational level, it's also important to sort of see that how can businesses sustain themselves? How can they grow themselves? How can they serve? How can they innovate? People will have to come in. People will have to do it. And if there's not enough investment going into the well-being of people from all perspectives, of obviously economically, socially, mentally, so I think the whole paradigm has really shifted. And it's been shifted for a long time. And in our part of the world now, there is greater realization that the stakeholder that I need to address is this planet, is this clean air. So everything is every living organism is a stakeholder for us.
Thank you. I mean, that actually sets the tone of this conversation pretty well. Okay, another one. So I agree. Business is supposed to take care of the society. Valid points from both of my inspirational friends. But then what is government going to do? What is the development sector going to do? Do you guys see a more integrated approach of a systemic change in place? How would investors react to this additional responsibility? That peripherals पे 1% का CSR होता था. Now you're actually asking us to take care of the society and the environment and the people. So the investors will be discouraged. And what is government and development sector going to do? Ayesha?
Yeah. Faraz, this is fascinating because, you know, as we were having this conversation, I was also reflecting on the fact that one of the reasons for this shift, by the way, is not, frankly, our generation. if you have spoken to young people, and I know you do, I think everyone in this group has engaged really a lot with younger people. It's actually these young people who are asking the right questions. So, when I was going for my first job and figuring out a career path, one of the most important questions I was asking was, by the way, how much is this paying? And where is this going to end up? And that's what everyone was asking, right?
Yeah.
And now when I'm interviewing, these young people are asking me, but why should I do this? What are you actually doing as an organization to help the world to make it a better place, actually make it a more sustainable planet, as Ayla was saying? So that generation, so keep in mind that this generation that's come about is far more environmentally conscious, far more aware of the dangers of inequality, and far more of an activist generation. They really want to do something. I think that's desire. And so, coupled with the fact that the biggest transfer of wealth that we are seeing right now, trillions and trillions of dollars, is actually an intergenerational transfer from the older generation that accumulated billions and trillions now to their children and their grandchildren. And so, when we talk about stakeholders, actually, in boardrooms, the conversation has shifted. The conversation is not just about profit. Of course, it's there. I think profit is not a bad word. Profit is something that you need to have in order to be sustainable. And any entrepreneur or any business that loses sight of that may not be sustainable and may not survive to do any of the great impact. So, A, the conversation has changed. B, it's this whole idea of it will take all of it. And I will take the example of Pakistan because this is our country and ultimately this is what we're most interested in. You see the problems of 220 million people, the issues of education and Azfar, and we've seen on the nutshell some wonderful conversations around how do you actually look at 21 million children out of school? How do you solve that problem? The government doesn't have the resources and necessarily the ability to collaborate and work effectively. Public sector can only take you so far. We as Acumen have tried, investing in solutions for low cost, high quality education, and those are really difficult ones to scale up. I mean, this is something that needs public sector financing, grant financing, and it also needs the private sector to come together. So ultimately, we all live in this society, and ultimately, we can't pass the buck and say, this is only the government's responsibility, this is only the public sector's responsibility. We all play a role. And I think really in places like Pakistan, where the government has pulled back and left these vast open spaces in healthcare, in education, wherever you turn, there's an open space. Somewhere between the private sector and the public sector, we have to figure out how we solve it. Just stepping back and saying, ye to meri problem nahi hai, has not gotten us anywhere. And I think we all need to move forward and figure out what can we do. Ayla, I know you had.
Thank you, Dr. Ayesha. Ayla, the same question, but with a slightly different frame from you. Would you say, I mean, I'm putting you on the spot for saying that see, the development sector came into being because the government could not fulfill the needs of the people and bridge the gap between whatever they had. So development sector and philanthropy, that came into being. Do you think that this is the beginning of the demise of development sector if business is going to take this over? Or you think that there is a different mechanism that development sector will take or look towards? I know but I'm sure you can take this one.
It's actually a great question. I would love to respond to this. But before that, let me touch upon something that Ayesha mentioned as well, the thought process of the younger generation. Let's look at what is the future of the world? Who is the future of the world? Who are the future decision makers of the world? In this 7+ billion population, more than half is young people. If we don't listen to them, if they're not part of the decision-making equation, then what are we doing? We are actually being really stupid. And I think for longevity or for probably making rational plans, you're not going to look behind you, you will look forward. And if we need to look forward, we need to address that. What are their concerns? What are their aspirations? what is their belief, what are their sets of what are their value sets, and how do they view the world in terms of working together and then addressing the needs of all stakeholders. So it's great that how the young generation is thinking how to address the major global issues, and the younger generation is much more collaborative. And if any peace is going to come about in years in the world, it'll be because of their push. It'll be because of the collective sort of the thought process or the narrative or the fundamental values, the base values that they all believe in. Now, coming to your question with regards to, is it the demise of the development sector? First of all, let's step back and analyze and understand that why did a greater space was taken by the development sector, and the development sector has done tremendously well, where a lot of stakeholders, including the governments, they failed and there was a gap. But now going forward, the need to put things right or to make investments to make the world sustainable, the development sector doesn't have that kind of resources. And looking at it from a business opportunity lens as well, the numbers are astonishing. If I were to give you the sustainability SDG business opportunity numbers just for Pakistan, the estimates are around $96 billion. We all have been reading and hearing a lot about the UN saying that 2.5 trillion needed every year for probably the next decade for the entire world. But let's focus on the country-specific case. And in that, so $96 billion for Pakistan. And out of that, about $44 billion is just for sustainable energy. And we know that we are in a time when we have probably excess energy, but excess energy is not the solution. We need to make sure that it's accessible, it's sustainable, it's environmental friendly, and it is affordable. And from business perspective, and then there are obviously, when we look at water and sanitation, when we look at supply chains, when we look at providing employment, etc., anything and everything, there's such a strong business case. So so where the development sector has sort of led or shown some sort of areas of concern, they've been adding value, but a lot of how they have been operating their business model in always was not sustainable. And where do you bring in that money from? Perhaps there will be many places where there will be a lot of partnerships, a lot of collaborations, and I greatly value that the learnings that have been there, the frameworks that they have developed, I think those partnerships can be really sort of one can sort of benefit and get a lot of value out from that. So and it's completely okay. Different sectors evolve, different collaborations evolve. Some stakeholders at some point in time, they're more relevant than the others. And now if greater awareness has come about that it is your responsibility and it is my responsibility, we might as well take it. And it is not about anyone's demise, I would say. It's just a natural process of evolution.
Well said. Well said. Okay, so what Dr. Ayesha and yourself in the past 6-7 minutes have kind of shared your perspective on the future. Two things have come about. One is the importance of the youth and the future generation. And second is that we're moving from, like Dr. Ayesha said, a cumulative generation to a sharing generation, where there is more resilience, and there is more appetite to actually do good in the youth, and there is more consciousness as well. Now, Ayla, you said that this is a great business opportunity for businesses to step in and make that impact. My next question is, what should be the balance of purpose and profit? I know it's a very generic question, but let's say, and I know Dr. Ayesha was itching to say that, because there is no one answer for that. But if you have to kind of look at it as in a percentage point, what is the tilt that you would like to actually create? And that would be very interesting for me to actually have that. Dr. Ayesha?
Faraz, I don't think there's any profit without purpose. Purpose is what colors everything that you're doing. And if you look at any successful business, right, you take any of the great successes, they're all trying to solve a problem. And then make things easier for consumers. So there is a larger purpose around what they're doing. And I think maybe the intent, maybe the thrust of your question also is around how do businesses think about sometimes when it's resource allocation between activity A will generate revenue, activity B will generate less revenue, but perhaps more social impact, for lack of a better word. So how do you choose between these? And I think there's no real easy answer to it. I mean, this is, again, you're asking an economist, right? How do you choose between these two? It's not a one-shot game. If you, I think there's this gentleman called Simon Sinek who talks about this a lot. This whole idea of we're in an infinite game. We're not interacting with our stakeholders only once. Okay, today I'm going to send you these biscuits, tell you these biscuits, and then I'm disappearing. So whether you get sick from these biscuits or you are fine or you're happy, but think of a hotel, these are the packet of biscuits, you pay me 100 rupees, I'm gone. No, that's not how it works. This is a repeated game. And generations actually who are selling those biscuits are developing a relationship with the consumer and with the society as a whole. So ultimately, I think purpose and profit are the same thing. Without purpose, you will not be able to generate sustainable profit. Unfortunately or fortunately, I think that's the case. And just a final, like a one little point when you were talking about the development sector, I wanted to add one thing. I actually don't think it's a great loss if it disappears, a big chunk of it, because it is hugely inefficient. When you're talking about foreign aid coming through, for $100 spent, actually $99 will go back to the donors or in some way or the other through transfer pricing. $1 will actually get to the recipient. Or phir hum kahenge, oh, hundreds of billions of dollars have been spent on African aid, Asian aid, or money. Right? So the parts of it that are hugely inefficient, which is where I think putting on what we call at the shorthand a business hat, which means really honing in on what is it that we're trying to do, having that model in front of you and saying, okay, ultimately, I am interested in providing good act at the lowest possible price to this population of people. Let me figure out the best way to do it. Versus, okay, I have to work through this government, that government, I have to send the money back to the donor agency in some way. There's so many layers that come into it. I had the sort of dubious honor of also working at a development agency for a bit. And I tell you, the waste in resources, I was putting my hair out and saying, how is it that we're actually wasting so much money on something that could be resolved relatively easily? So frankly, if business kicking in means that half the development sector that is inefficient disappears, I think that's a good thing for the world. I have no fears that I'm not shedding over that.
No, I agree with you. And there are two elements to that. And Ayla would like you to kind of shed some light on this. So we do know that development aid is mandated as well. We also know there is a lot of inefficiency there as well. Of course, they've done some great stuff as well. The development aid's political mandate has been demonstrated recently with FCO and DFID's merger. So you can actually see where the world is moving towards. Now, where do you see and what kind of businesses, Ayla, you see reshaping this statement that that businesses should support or societies? What are the examples of certain businesses that you can actually share with us that you look at it and you say, yeah, is tarike se kaam hona chahiye?
Yeah. So first of all, let me just add one point here that let's all openly sort of agree and accept that profit making is completely fine. There's nothing bad about it, as long as you are doing it in the right manner. You are being transparent, you are solving a problem, as Ayesha said, that so many businesses are solving problems and they are addressing issues, and there is an innovation to address the broader need if those innovations come about. And again, I link that back to that if those innovations are not there, then businesses will not grow. They will stop growing. They'll stop. The process of evolution will stop. So that's something that a lot of sectors, a lot of organizations, they have realized. And I will give you an example of the fossil fuel industry. The fossil fuel industry is now stepping in. First, obviously, the debate started with regards to, all right, we need to do our carbon capture, we need to reduce our carbon footprint, and they would start investing in sort of they would sort of go for set-offs. But then they started to look at their own processes, and then when they sort of covered that milestone, then what next? All right, this industry, we can obviously work like an ostrich and probably close our eyes, but if we sort of look forward, where the world is heading, what will remain relevant, what are the alternates coming about? So what are they doing now? They're investing in alternates, and it is a good thing from a business perspective. It is a more responsible thing, and it is again addressing all the stakeholders. Obviously, the return that they're providing to the shareholders, and in the process serving everyone else, curtailing the carbon emissions. And businesses now understand that there is more value that they can generate out of for this. So whether it's the transport sector, whether it is the fossil fuel industry, whether it is, I would say, even to some extent, the FMCG, because people are now, the buyers around the world, they have reshaped their behaviors as well. So where they would be completely okay going for, say, buying probably, say, a bag of cereal, and if they have an option of, say, something organic with an organic, completely sort of decompostable packing, one would go for that, and probably not the other one. And looking at that, how one sort of even a single molecule, what's the journey of a single molecule, and how they can get even say financial value out of that, and in the process addressing the whole concern. Now there are packaging, and I think this was some company was doing maybe with coffee cups or something, that they would have seeds in it, that when you sort of dispose it off, trees would start growing. There are sort of all these interesting innovations, and these are small little simple solutions. So I would say that across almost, there's hardly any industry that I can think of that is not doing it. And those who are at one end of the spectrum, where their present carbon emission contribution or their present level of adding to the global sustainability is very low, even they are doing this. And in terms of how they are planning their future strategy, and how they are planning their 3 years, 5 years business plans, I think from people who would have invested in probably drilling an oil well, they would be then investing in something completely different, which has a longer life, which is more sustainable, and will ensure that they keep on getting their financial returns as well. So I mean, I can't think of probably an industry that is that's being very complacent. Maybe not everyone is at the same stage, at the same stage of readiness, but I think a lot of industries they are moving forward. Yeah.
Okay, I've got. Thank you so much, Ayla. This was quite elaborate and useful. Now, based out of the conversation, there are just two elements that has come out that I would love you guys to kind of share your opinion on. Do you think that in coming times we would need to rethink the regulatory reforms of what percentage of profit and purpose should be, because this is a great opportunity for businesses, and vulturism might prevail and in fact might grow. So in order to curtail that, because development sector is in a way taking a kind of a backseat and rethinking their way forward. Government is also looking towards businesses and the private sector as well to kind of take a lead and a more active role. That is a great opportunity, but at the same time, for a vulture mindset, it can really go the counter way. So do you think regulatory reforms in order to curtail a situation, let's say 20 years down the road, is critical? Do we need to think about it? Do we need to worry about it, Dr. Ayesha?
Faraz, I mean, it's sort of, we'll have to step back and touch on, we're talking about Pakistan at this point, right, in our decision making. And somewhere in the chat, I also saw a question around taxes, which is related to this when we talk about public sector allocation of resource. You know, I heard this wonderful talk again. I feel like I'm constantly like pushing Nutshell's forum, but over the past few weeks, I've heard these amazing talks. One of them was by Dr. Atif. And here, the idea really was, and he talked about how decision-making is so flawed in our government. In fact, that we're not efficient in terms of figuring out where resources should be allocated. And while on the surface, that seems like a very straightforward comment to make, and everyone knows it, but when you're talking about questions of businesses also trusting the government, then divert whatever tax revenues the business contributes to the government to an efficient disposal of that, so that you set up the right structure for business, provide them energy in a consistent way, provide them water, sanitation, you know, all the basics that a business needs, and a certain quality of human resources. Unfortunately, that's not happening, right? And so we now live in a bubble. A little earlier, you know, when we were having our minor talk, all of us were wondering about, do we have our generators in place so that they kick in, so that this talk isn't interrupted? So we're all finding ways of working around the public sector, sort of pulling away from providing these necessary infrastructure and support systems that human beings need to thrive. There is a critical role of government in here. I vote for my government because I trust the government. I pay my taxes. I trust the government to provide these for everyone. It is not important to me that I can now create this for myself and create this, but ultimately this is for society. And if we go back to the question of values, tax allocation, government regulation, to me, there is no way Pakistan can actually come out of the situation and take its position in being the strong country that it should be without all of us coming together and working towards lifting average Pakistan. Our life, the average Pakistani life, is actually full of constant fight. You know, I was sitting with someone who was saying that, you know, our poor people, they don't do anything. They go home, they work for 5 hours a month. How is that? Then they're just not doing anything. And I said, do you realize how much they just get a kerosene lamp in their home, to go and find water, to do basic things, and how this individual is completely decimated if someone in their family is sick because government has abdicated responsibility for that. Ultimately, whether it's business or individuals or public sector, we all have to come together and play a role in it. Society will not, and I'm biased in the Pakistani sense, in Pakistan cannot afford not to upgrade society, because there's no way forward without it. Neither can government, neither can the development sector, neither as individuals can the four of us afford to only think about us. Because, you know, all of us, bachpan se we've been hearing Pakistan ek nazuk mode pe hai, Pakistan ek nazuk mode pe hai. I mean, it's always been at a nazuk mode. We have to figure out how to move it forward. It is time. We have the world in front of us, the logical revolution. We have the tools at our disposal. We can't look over our shoulder and say someone else has to do it. All of us.
True. Well said. Ayla,
Yeah.
what's your take on this?
Faraz, I would say that I think both are important. The regulation is important, but then I'll also talk from the other side of the table as well. So why regulation is important? Because it does provide clarity. It does set the scene. It sort of gives a sense of where things should be moving. Policies are extremely important, and at times they also can work as incentives for other stakeholders, including businesses, including the private sector, to come in and set up projects, set up solutions where there is a need. However, having said this, um, if the world is not static, why should the policies be? Why should the regulations be? They
Well
should
said.
not be set in stone. They should be very forward looking, and there should be a continuous change in the same as well, but change obviously for the better, not a regressive change by any manner. Now, from the other side of the table, over regulation really kills innovation. Over regulation even kills competition. And I think we have a remarkable case in Pakistan, and I like to sort of use that analogy for a lot of other sectors as well. The telecom sector. Look at the value it created. Look at how the entire and obviously it sort of emerged from policies, it emerged from some sort of frameworks. To some extent there is regulation as well, but when competition came in the market, it came with innovation. It sort of provided benefit to almost every single stakeholder, and it sort of gave affordability as well. It gave access to people, and now with sort of the now moving towards, say, not just from the connectivity that was the base, and then moving towards your financial instrument, financial wallets through your phone, etc., and now moving towards the ease of transacting with each other. There are so many benefits that are not even being measured. Maybe somebody is, but I think to a large extent there are so many benefits that are not being measured. So look at that, where when the regulation took a step back, what amazing things competition did. But at the same time, obviously there needs to be a little check and balance. And why so? Because to make sure that different organizations or different sectors, they don't collude, or they don't sort of come make mechanisms where there are anti-competitive behaviors, which then sort of which are not beneficial for the consumers, or they're hurting some stakeholders in a manner. So there has to be check. But I think what the regulators, what the policymakers should do is they should set out frameworks. They should do it with a lot of thought put into this, and they should always keep a window open for making improvements and making changes. And I think that's a mindset shift that we need to have. And I'll just sort of add my sort of this point here with an adding just adding one bit here, that we need to have a partnership mind frame. In our country, we are sort of getting more and more polarized, that it's them and it's me. If we don't sit on the table, how do you solve anything really? So I think that's extremely important.
Well said. I think this both your closing remarks have actually culminated in a frame that is very hopeful for not only for Pakistan, but I think for the world as well. What I loved about the conversation was that it was pragmatic. It was not just saying yes. We talked about some tough areas, tough questions, and there were some very candid opinions and answers. So thank you so much. I think individually we agree that in Pakistan as a nation, we all do a lot of good. I think that needs to translate in a more active institutional roles, and that institutional momentum needs to actually bring that systemic change that we all are talking about. And I think with individuals like yourselves, the leadership like yourselves, that day is not that far away. I'd like to really, really thank you, for being here on a Saturday morning. And I would like to thank Azfar and Nutshell Conferences for giving us this opportunity to curate this conversation. So over to you, Azfar, and thank you once again.
Thanks Faraz, thanks Ayesha, and thanks to Ayla. All three of you were brilliant. And one point Ayla mentioned about the collaboration of the partnership. I think there is more need of collaboration and synergies amongst all the concerned stakeholders. And one point she mentioned about the opportunities. There are hurdles, there are barriers in our countries, and there is a history. But there are unlimited opportunities as well. So there is a need to promote all these opportunities, identify these opportunities, and to create a positive enabling environment for the entrepreneurs to do the constructive work. With this note, I'm handing over the proceedings to Azfar Balmir of TRG LearnFest. I'm again grateful to TRG LearnFest. This is the 6th day of TRG LearnFest, and they are doing amazing work digitally this year because of the lockdown and everything. But this is an opportunity I think we should consider to host this more and more in the coming years as well on the digital platform to engage the global community as well. So again, thanks to Ayesha, Ayla, and Faraz, and thanks to Mayor Jaliawala, Sarah Majid, and the TRG Managing Committee and Azfar. Over to you.
Don't miss this exciting opportunity to learn at Pakistan's first Learning Festival.
Do you understand the difference between disability and being differently able?
All about learning with fun.
Simply because this is for the first time we, the trainers, are paying for you to come and get trained. Jeete raho.
Be a change agent.
Learning is unlimited.
At LearnFest, turn yourself on.
Get ready for a series of highly engaging and powerful training sessions at LearnFest.
See you there.
Thank you very much, असफर भाई, फराज भाई. Wonderful to see you. मैंने dialogue तो miss किया, लेकिन मुझे यकीन है बहुत अच्छा रहा होगा. Looking at the people and how असफर भाई prepares. Great to see you. असफर has disappeared and I wanted to make sure कि मैं शक्ल दिखा के आपका शुक्रिया जरूर अदा करूं.
No, आपका शुक्रिया, and I think you and your team is doing amazing work, and you decided to continue this LearnFest instead of the gap. And this was much needed. I'm listening to very good reviews about different sessions. Of course, I attended many sessions in the last 5 days, but of course, I was unable to attend every session. But LearnFest is going amazing. And do more and more. And in addition to physical events in the coming years, continue this virtual thing also, because here is an opportunity to engage the thousands and thousands of individuals easily. So good luck to you.
Now that Mr. Azfar Ahsan has said it, it looks like that's the way it's gonna be. कल भी सारे पैनलिस्ट ने PSTD वालों ने यही कहा कि फिजिकल तो रिज्यूम होगा, लेकिन डिजिटल ने अपनी स्ट्रेंथ दिखाई है, एक्सेस दिखाया है, और इतनी एक्सपर्टीज साथ लाना वैसे मुमकिन नहीं था. You have worked very hard to make this happen physically.
Actually, I am a student of campus management, and my forecast is I placed on my Facebook 2 months back as well, that after 1 year, the physical conferences and physical events size will be much bigger in comparison with the pre-COVID world. Because now you are using the mediums, you know the access to the global community, how to engage them. And there is an opportunity to, promote your agenda, promote your narrative, promote your country as well, and to share with maximum stakeholders. So we should evaluate and upgrade ourselves for the future. and design everything accordingly. I think the combination of virtual and the physical will make this much bigger in comparison with the previous. So this is the blessing, and this is an opportunity after the COVID world. I'm grateful to COVID that they provided us an opportunity. So this should be our mindset, and I'm very happy. So these are the learnings, and
bade badal gaye, babe badal gaye, people, companies who wouldn't change, stores that would say never deliver.
We are using, multiple digital platforms. Otherwise, we were unable to do anything. But this was really a blessing, despite all the troubles the global community faced. Thousands of individuals lost their life, but I think there is a need of positivity. There is a complete shift in the mindset, actually. So we should learn and we should practice after some time instead of coming back to again the old one. So new normal is really a good opportunity for everyone.
Scary and exciting. Thank you, Azfar bhai. Wonderful thoughts there. Faraz bhai, do you want to say something? Thank you. I'm glad you were able to make it and you were part of the LearnFest.
You should listen to Faraz again, because he's the rock star of the future. He's the rock star right now. He's the biggest leader for the future. So taking appointment
Faraz,
him will be a biggest problem for all of us. So
Faraz is the real rock star when you're traveling with him. On that note, thank you very much, the two of you, for being awesome, and the panelists. Take care.